Hello, Dr. Hayley Stainton here from Tourism Teacher. It's summer holiday time. I'm super excited. So I am here packing. It has been a long few months and I am ready to be a tourist. So while I've been here choosing whether to take sandals or flip-flops, it got me thinking, what actually is tourism? This summer, we will be backpacking along the Silk Road. That's tourism, right? And a friend of mine is chilling on the beach all summer. That's tourism too, isn't it? But what if I told you that my friend actually lived just across the road from that beach? And what if she stayed in that beach area for a month or a year? Is she still a tourist? I was curious about what others were saying online, so I decided to do a bit of research myself. I opened up my YouTube app and I watched the top ranking videos for the term, what is tourism? And what I found was that the vast majority of videos on this topic were created by people who are not experts, they're tourists themselves or they're students, and they were super dull PowerPoint presentation, robot voiceover type of videos. And the worst part, most of these videos don't even tell you what tourism is. So here I am, a fully fledged PhD with more than 15 years experience of teaching and researching in travel and tourism. So if anyone is qualified to tell you what is tourism, it's me. And actually, I think this highlights a really important point, and it's something that I teach my students over and over again. Only use credible sources. So I have studied and taught and worked in travel and tourism for many, many years. I'm highly qualified. You can trust what I'm saying. I'm a credible source. But perhaps the person who's making the video in their bedroom, who's just sat there making videos and they're not the expert, is not the best person to trust. I will do another session on referencing and the credibility of sources because I think this is super, super important and it underpins everything we do when we're researching and writing. So do subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for that one. And very quickly, before I do get started on telling you exactly what tourism is, I would just like to tell you a little something about the YouTube algorithm. Now, I know you're not here to learn the ins and outs of how YouTube works, but what I would like to tell you is that YouTube will not know that you're finding this video helpful or that it is useful unless you hit the like button for me. So please do go ahead before we go any further and press that like button. That will tell that my content is credible, that it is useful, and it will push me up above some of those other videos on YouTube that aren't so credible and aren't so useful to people. So go ahead, push that like button, and I will be eternally grateful. Okay, back to my packing. Oh, I mean telling you all about what tourism is. While most of us have been a tourist at some point or another in our lives, you might find yourself asking, what is tourism? And I'll tell you, actually, there is no straight-cut answer to this question. Sorry to disappoint. The tourism industry is argued to be the biggest industry in the world, employing more people than any other industry. But did you notice the way that I used the word argue? You see, the tourism industry is somewhat grey in nature. In other words, what one person might say is definitely tourism, another person might say is definitely not. I guess some things are just black and white and other things are not. And don't even get me started on this traveller versus tourist debate. It's always floating around and it's such a load of absolute rubbish. Shock! Travellers are tourists too. At least in the context of this debate anyway. But perhaps I'll make another video on that sometime in the future. Okay, have I confused you a bit? Don't worry, I'm going to explain all. Tourism is the generic term used to cover both supply and demand that has been adopted in a variety of forms and used throughout the world. Tourism essentially refers to the activities undertaken by visitors, also known as the visitor economy. The tourism industry encompasses all activity that takes place within this visitor economy. This includes activities that are directly related to the tourist, such as staying in a hotel, ordering a meal, or visiting a tourist attraction. It also includes indirect activities, such as the transport company which delivers food to the restaurant in which the tourist eats, or the laundry company that has the contract with the hotel for cleaning the bed sheets. And it's largely due to these indirect contributions that the travel and tourism industry is actually so difficult to measure and so difficult to accurately define. Tourism comes in many different shapes and sizes and many different forms. In the past couple of years, I've laid on a beach in Spain, I've backpacked through Thailand, I've survived temperatures of minus 30 degrees at the Harbin Ice Festival in China, and I've hiked through the Mendip Hills in the UK with a child on my back and another one on my front. And these are just a few examples of how I personally have been a tourist over the last few months. There are so many different ways that we can be tourists, and that's why defining tourism is no easy feat. There are so many different types of tourism. In fact, I recently posted a video about 150 different types of tourism, so you should definitely check that one out. There is some excellent travel inspiration right there. Anyway, I digress. From mass tourism to niche tourism, domestic tourism to international tourism, volunteer tourism to suicide tourism. There are many different ways that we can be tourists. And whilst there are so many different types of tourism, essentially they all come under the same tourism umbrella. This is because they all revolve around the visitor economy and they all feed the visitor economy in one way or another. Tourism is a phenomenon with no universally accepted definition. This is because it's complex and it's unique and it's individual. Like I said, it's kind of a grey area. You might be thinking, why does it even matter how we define the term tourism? Well, it kind of does, actually. You see, if different countries want to work together, if different areas of the industry want to work together, but they define tourism in different ways, this makes things a bit complicated. It makes it hard to plan, it makes it hard to account for things. If one country thinks someone is a tourist and another country says they're not, it makes things messy and complicated. The most widely used definition of tourism was written by the World Trade Organization and the United Nations Statistics Division back in 1994. Here it's noted that in order to qualify as a tourist, one must travel and remain in a place outside of their usual residential environment for at least one night and not more than one consecutive year for leisure, business or other purposes. So are you telling me when I went to Windsor Castle, that's 30 minutes down the road from my house, I wasn't a tourist, but the Americans and the Italians and the other nationalities who'd booked a hotel, they were? And what about the time when I went to Brighton for the day? I just wanted to relax on the beach, but I commuted there and back, so I wasn't a tourist then either? And what about the time that I went backpacking for 13 months? Was I not a tourist in the last month? Was I not a tourist the whole time because it lasted more than 12 months? This definition has serious flaws if you ask me. Matthewson and Wall also attempted to define the term tourism back in 1982. These guys do not impose a time frame, rather they state that one must travel to a destination temporarily. And Leiper, in 1979, believed that defining tourism is more complex than this, proposing that there are three approaches that can be taken. The economic stance focuses on tourism as a business. The technical stance focuses on the tourist in order to provide a common basis by which to collect data. And the holistic stance attempts to include the entire essence of the subject. Whilst definitions like this might be quite useful in terms of academic literature, in a practical sense, not so much. Like I said, it's a grey area. In fact, Novelli published a book on niche tourism. It's a great book, by the way. You should check it out. I have put the link down in the reading list below. In this book, they explain the way in which tourists have developed as consumers. We have become increasingly sophisticated in our needs and preferences. We want different things and new things from our tourist experiences, many of which may not neatly fit within the predefined limits of the travel and tourism industry. And just a few days ago, an academic suggested that if you do not leave home, you are not a tourist. Well, if you ask me, that is massively outdated and that is so wrong. But if you look at those definitions we've just covered, that is what they suggest. But seriously, virtual tourism? You don't leave home for that, do you? We live in the 21st century now. So much of our lives is online, including, in some cases, tourism. People do know that these definitions are outdated. They do understand this, but what I find really surprising is that nobody has attempted to create a more modern, a more up-to-date version. If there is a definition that I don't know about, please tell me. Please leave it in the comments because I haven't seen it and I'd love to know. But as far as I'm aware, there aren't any. So I thought it might be fun to play a little game. Why don't you guys, based on everything that I've taught you, create your own definition, drop it in the comments below. I do have a full article on my website that's all about the definition of tourism, and I will choose the best definition from the comments section below and I will add that to my website with a reference of your name, and I'll add in your link, your social media or your website or whatever you choose. So go ahead, let me know in the comments, how should we define tourism in this day and age? Okay, now I really do need to get back to my packing, but before I go, if you have stuck around for the whole of this video, you've obviously found it quite helpful, so please do subscribe to my channel, please do hit that like button, hit that notification button. I release videos every Tuesday and I hope that you will find them very interesting, helpful and informative. Now, where's my sun cream?